In this video, I will present the Kalam Cosmological Argument. It is believed by many philosophers and many scientists that religion is a matter of blind belief, blind faith. Great Sigmund Freud thought that the idea that we have, at least here in the West, our idea of God is just a projection, a need that we have, a childish need at that, for a father figure. That's why, according to Sigmund Freud, we imagine God or gods. But it's nothing more than a childhood neurosis. And again, there is a trend in the sciences and also in philosophy that sees religion and science and reason on two different scales. On the one side, there's reason and science, rationality. And on the other side, as you can see, there's belief in God. This sort of attitude can be described as what is known as explicit atheism. Why do I call it explicit atheism? Because there seems to be many kinds of atheism. You can be an atheist and really not care so much about the question of God. So you might be an atheist in the sense that you don't care enough. Or there are agnostics. There's people who say that it's not possible, or they don't know whether it's possible to prove the existence of God, to know the existence of God. But explicit atheism is a very positive affirmation, or I should say denial, that God exists. So explicit atheism says that there is no God, there's no evidence for God, and belief in God is positively irrational. But I think that there is an argument, the classical Kalam Cosmological Argument. And this argument offers rigorous, logical, and scientific proof even for the existence of God. And if the argument is correct, it shows that explicit atheism is an extreme rejection of rational evidence for God. And so atheism is a positively irrational position. Now, some preliminaries before I discuss the argument. There are many things in the universe: telephones, pizzas, couches, and so on. There are also ideas, books, images, and so on. Now, some of these things come into existence. By things, I mean either physical things, like tables, pizzas, telephones, babies, or non-physical things, such as concepts. For example, the concept of justice, the concept of humanity, or just mental images and ideas. And by coming into existence, I mean that something can come into existence from pre-existing stuff gradually. For example, houses come into existence gradually by building brick by brick, or babies come into existence gradually from pre-existing material. What I mean by pre-existing material, in the case of a baby, there's a sperm and the egg and the zygote and the embryo and the fetus and the baby. Or things can come into existence all at once with no pre-existing material. For example, your thoughts, your ideas are not made of sand or plastic or anything. Presumably, thoughts are immaterial, and they can come into your head. You can come all at once, and nothing was required really, except for, of course, your brain, maybe your mind, but the thoughts themselves are not made of anything. Also, numbers is another example. Okay, so with that in place, let me explain the argument now. The Kalam argument has two premises and a conclusion. It's a very simple syllogism. The first premise is that all things, now we know what things are, material or immaterial. So all things that come into existence are brought into existence by something else. Now, be very careful here, because I'm not saying here that all things come into existence. Rather, I am saying that only those things that come into existence are brought into existence by something else. I am not saying that everything is brought into existence by something else, but only those things that come into existence. The second premise says that the universe is one of those things that came into existence, okay? From which it follows that the universe was brought into existence by something else. This is in logic what we call a deductive valid argument. It has two premises. The premises are, as you can see, are related, and they constitute a bridge to the conclusion. So if the premises are true, it will be impossible for the conclusion to be false. And consequently, my job now is to show you the truth of the premises. Let's start by premise 1. All things that come into existence are brought into existence by something else. How do we know that this is true? First of all, something cannot come from nothing. By nothing here, I don't mean an empty space, a dark space, like a dark room where nothing is inside, because the room itself would be something. You might say, well, I'm not thinking of a room, I'm thinking about an empty space. But even that empty space would be something. It would be space. So if there is nothing, if nothing exists, there's no energy, no time, no space. It seems just impossible that anything, even a microscopic particle, can come into existence. This is vaguely, maybe not so vaguely, the principle of sufficient reason, PSR. The principle of sufficient reason says that either something exists necessarily, or it has an explanation for its existence. And the explanation for its existence is either itself or external to that thing. If a thing, anything, could come into existence from nothing, then it doesn't seem that there is a principle that stops things, objects, people from coming into existence out of nothing. We would have observed things coming into existence from nothing. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So it seems to me that some atheists, for example, reject the PSR. But it is a high price to pay, because the universe came into existence out of nothing and from nothing is way more controversial than the notion that the universe came into existence at least by something else. So I would think that the first premise is obviously true. It's self-evident. Let's look now at premise 2, which is the more controversial of the two. Maybe not controversial is not the right word. The right word is, disputed. The universe is a thing that came into existence. Or in other words, the universe is not eternal. The universe has not been there forever. So let me show you why this premise is true. And in order to show you that it is true, let's work in reverse. So let's start from the opposite. Now, suppose that the universe does not have a beginning. It doesn't begin. Suppose for a moment that the universe is eternal. So let's test this theory. Is it possible, in other words, that the universe is eternal? Well, what would that mean if the universe was eternal? It would mean that the number of temporal sequences, let's just arbitrarily divide the universe into years. So if you ask yourself, how many years, how old is the universe? Well, the answer is if the universe never started, if the universe is eternal, then the universe is infinitely old. But what does infinite mean? There are two meanings of infinite. Let's see which one are we talking about when we talk about a beginningless universe. The first meaning is a growing infinite. Now, a growing infinite, which is also known as potential infinite, refers to a collection of anything. It could be stamps or coins or cell phones, but it's a collection that begins, and the number of items in that collection keeps on growing, increasing. For example, a collection of coins. When you start your collection and you keep going and going and going. That's one meaning of infinity. Now, question is this. Is this what we mean when we say that the universe is infinite? No, we don't. Because the idea that the universe never began to exist, the idea that the universe is infinite, cannot be the same idea as a potential or growing infinite. Because think about it. The universe might be, the years, I should say, of the universe might be increasing as we move forward. Okay, so meaning tomorrow it is another day, and there's going to be a next year and another year and another year and so on. But so the universe is growing, or the number of years of the universe is growing in the future. But obviously, it's not growing in the past, because the past has already occurred, right? So from our point in time, when you look back at the years of the universe, they're not growing. They already happened. Okay, so this is not what we mean when we refer to the universe as infinite. Or rather, I should say, when we refer to the number of years of the universe. This is not the kind of infinity that we mean. What we mean is the second meaning, a complete infinite, what is known as an actual infinite. Now, a complete infinite, what is it? It is a strange concept. It's a very mathematical concept, okay? Because a complete infinite is a collection, and this collection is supposed to have an infinite number of items or members. But the number of members, the number of items in this collection, is not growing. It's already there. It's discrete. Think of an example, the set of all integers. So when you think of a mathematical set of all integers, all the numbers, okay? Negative numbers and positive numbers, all of them How many are they? An infinite number of numbers. But the number of numbers is not growing. It's not like the coin collection where you can add one more coin. In a set of all integers, you cannot add one more number because it's already there. Okay? So this is what we mean, what people mean when they say that the universe is eternal. They don't mean that the universe keeps growing in the past, okay? Because it does grow. Everybody agrees that the number of years of the universe are growing in the future. I'm not talking about the future. I'm interested in the past, okay? So, in the past, the number of years are not growing. They are already there. They have already happened. They've already occurred. So that's not what we mean. What we mean, what they mean, when they say that the universe never began to exist, they mean that the universe in the past, the number of years are actually infinite. They form a complete set, a complete infinite. Namely, a number of years that is discrete, that is complete, that is done. It's not growing, and yet it is an infinite number. Okay, so now, let me demonstrate to you that a growing infinite is possible, as I just demonstrated a second ago. Let's say that you have a collection of coins. You have 4 coins. What do? You add one more, and you can add one more again, and again, and again. So, a growing infinite is obvious. It's possible. The problem is that a complete, actual infinite is not possible. No collection can contain an infinite number of items. And again, what I mean by an infinite number of items here is a number greater than any natural number and form a complete collection. It seems obvious to me because numbers never end, so it's impossible to have a number of items which is greater than a natural number. So this kind of collection cannot exist. If you don't believe me, I will offer 4 arguments. The first argument: if the universe never began to exist, it means that the number of years prior to today would be a complete infinite set. But a complete infinite set doesn't exist, and therefore the universe is a growing infinite. In other words, it began a finite time ago in the past, and it continues to grow. Now think about it. If the universe had an infinite number of years, any number of years could be added without changing the total number. So think about it. if we say that the number of years is infinite, infinity plus 1, or infinity plus 1,000,000, or infinity plus 1,000,000,000, or infinity plus infinity equals infinity. But how can that be possible? That's just absurd. If you add one more item, then the number should be different. But then it's not, because it's still an infinite number of anything. What if I subtract a certain number of items from an infinite number of items? Well, if I, for example, subtract all the years, but today, this year. So I keep 2021 and I subtract all the other years. What are we talking about here? We're talking about subtracting an infinite number of years from an infinite number of years. Why? Because if the number of years of the universe is infinite, and the number of years prior to this year, the current year, is an infinite number of years, then I would be subtracting infinity from infinity. And infinity from infinity will give me 1. This is also absurd. Now, what if I subtract all the even-numbered years and I leave all the odd-numbered years? Again, how many odd number years and even number years are there? An infinite number, an infinite number of them. So I would be subtracting infinity from infinity. And infinity minus infinity, in this case, gives me infinity. But wait a second. In the previous example, infinity minus infinity equals 1. How can infinity minus infinity now equals infinity? Well, if you think that this is getting really crazy, think another example. Think about it. I can subtract all the even-numbered years many times. In fact, I can do this an infinite number of times, and I will never run out of years. I can keep subtracting infinity from infinity constantly, every day, forever, and I will never run out of years. It's crazy, isn't it? Now, what if I subtract all the years? In other words, infinity minus infinity. I get 0. So what's the point of this argument? The point of this argument is that the nature is to show you that the absurd nature of infinity. Infinity minus infinity, or infinity plus infinity, or infinity plus or minus any number can yield any number from 0 to infinity. So what this argument illustrates is that infinity is only a mathematical concept, but it has no physical application. And if it has no physical application, it means that the universe is not a collection, a complete collection of years, where the number of years is infinite. So, if actual infinites could exist, such absurdities would exist. But these absurdities obviously cannot exist in real life. Okay? Consequently, actual infinites, since they don't exist, then this means that the universe is not an example of an actual infinite. The universe cannot have an infinite past, an infinite number of years in the past. Therefore, the conclusion is that the universe had a beginning. The universe had a first temporal sequence, a first year, prior to which there was absolutely nothing. And I don't mean an empty space, because space is what exists from the creation of the universe. The universe is space, time, energy, etc. So before the universe, before space, there was no space. All right. This is very similar to the what is known as Hilbert's paradox, named after the mathematician David Hilbert. Here you have a hotel. You have to imagine a hotel that has an infinite number of guests. Now, it's important that you understand that the hotel has an infinite number of rooms. And actually, the hotel is a great way of thinking of the universe, because an actual infinity. Think about this. I don't mean that people are workers, construction workers are building the hotel as we speak. The hotel is done. The hotel is ready. And how many rooms does this hotel have? Well, the answer would be an infinite number of rooms. They're already there. It's already an infinite hotel. Suppose that there's no vacancy and all the rooms are taken. Okay? Now, in the first example, a new guest needs a room. Easy, the proprietor can find a room for the new guest. How? By moving guest in room number 1 from room number 1 into the room number 2. Or what about the guest that was in room number 2? He's going to be moved to room number 3. What about the one in number 3? He's going to move to room number 4. And you see where this is going. The point is that now room 1 is vacant. What's odd is that before this guest, the new guest, arrived, all the rooms were full. And now the number of guests is the same. Now suppose that an infinite number of guests want a room. Once again, the proprietor can accommodate them by moving the guest in room number 1 into room number 2. the guest in room number 2, in room number 4, the one in number 3 and number 6, all the way to infinity. And so now all the odd numbered rooms are vacant. And the proprietor can accommodate an infinite number of guests. Once again, the rooms, the hotel was completely packed. And now, how is it possible that we added an infinite number of guests? Moreover, the number of guests now is the same as the number of guests that we had before, namely an infinite number. Now, suppose that all even-numbered guests check out. Since the number of remaining guests is infinite, there's still an infinite number of guests, even though an infinite number of guests just checked out. What if the proprietor does not like to have an infinite number of vacant rooms? Hey, he can do the inverse operation. He can move back again, shift back all the guests into their original rooms, and now the hotel is packed again, and there's no vacancy again. But a moment ago, they had an infinite number of empty rooms. Now, what if guests in rooms higher than 4 check out? Well, now only 3 guests are left in the hotel. This is obviously an absurdity. So the conclusion is that no actual infinite, no complete infinite can exist. The universe, therefore, cannot have an actual infinite, a complete infinite number of years. And consequently, the universe had a beginning. All right. Argument 3. It is impossible to traverse a complete infinite. Let me illustrate this by my example that I call the stairway to infinity. Now, if a person claims to have walked down the stairway from infinity to here, I don't think he is telling the truth. First question is, if this stairway is a stairway from infinity, when did he start walking down the stairs? If there is no beginning, obviously he didn't start at any particular point. And if he can he walk back to infinity? When will he arrive? Well, it seems that he will never arrive at the end. And why has he just finished now? But think about it. If it's impossible to get to the end of the stairway to infinity, because there is no end, how is it possible to get to here to this end from infinity. Now, what's the relevance of this argument? It should be obvious. We are here in 2021. Now, how is it possible that the universe never started and yet it arrived at 2021? It seems impossible. When did he start? When did the universe start? Well, never, because there is no beginning according to this supposition. But if there is no start, then it can't be the present year. Why? Well, because it would take literally forever to get here. In other words, the current year will never arrive. Again, think about it. Would it be possible to go from, let's say that you have a time machine. Would it be possible to go from 2021 to the beginning of the universe? Well, according to the supposition, the hypothesis here, there is no beginning of the universe. So how long will you be traveling? Well, you will be traveling forever and ever and ever and ever, and never end your trip. Never arrive anywhere. Well then, if it's impossible to traverse the universe back, why should it be possible to traverse it the other way around, from infinity to the present? It would be impossible. So the conclusion is that as it is impossible to walk down the infinite stairway, by the same token, it's equally impossible for the present year, the present time, to have arrived. Why? Because after 1 year, there will be another year, and another year, and another year, and another year, all the way to infinity. Therefore, the conclusion is that the universe had a beginning, or in other words, the very fact that there is a present time implies that there was a beginning time. All right, argument number 4. Argument number 4 is the standard Big Bang theory of the universe. In 1927, the physicist Georges Lemaitre thought that a universe that is expanding must originate from something. It must have a beginning. And sure enough, in 1929, Edwin Hubble discovered what is known as the red light shift. The red light shift is an observation of galaxies. The red light is a method for measuring the distance of galaxies. Hubble noted that the same galaxies were emitting a darker red. This would mean that these galaxies are moving farther and farther away. And sure enough, in 1964, the last piece of the puzzle the last piece of evidence came in when the radio astronomers Penzias and Wilson discovered the so-called cosmic microwave background radiation. In other words, that's the sign. The radiation is a sign that there has been a very violent explosion or expansion, proving that the universe is expanding, is stretching. Now, if you're wondering, into what is the universe expanding? The answer is simply, the universe is not expanding into anything, because the universe is everything. There's no external space or anything outside the universe. So, discovery that the universe is in a state of isotropic expansion. Isotropic meaning equal everywhere. It's been expanding from a small, dense state a finite time ago, prior to which there was absolutely nothing. And this is known as the Big Bang model. This is what it best explains the origin of the universe. Now, of course, there are other theories, other models. There is a quantum model that says that universes spring out of a quantum vacuum. But this presupposes space-time, presupposes that there's something there already. There's also Stephen Hawking created a model that relies on imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers are numbers such as the negative square root of a number, and these are used in physics and mathematics to describe certain features of reality. Now, the way that Hawking used imaginary numbers is in the way that these numbers eliminate the what we call the singularity, or the first seed of the universe. So time, according to this theory, is like a sphere, that there's no beginning, no end. The problem is that imaginary numbers don't really describe reality as it is in the following sense. Just like negative numbers do not describe reality, imaginary numbers don't describe reality. Think about this example. If you ask me, how much money do you have in your bank account right now? And I say to you, oh, I have negative $50. But surely you're not going to believe that physically there is such thing as negative $50. Okay? It's only a mathematical concept, meaning you owe the bank $50. Or if I say to you that I have negative 3 apples in my basket, you're not going to believe that there's such thing as negative apples. Okay? Positive numbers, on the other hand, describe and relate properly to reality. So the problem with this theory, this model, is that on paper it works because of these negative numbers, these imaginary numbers. But as soon as you want to relate it to the world, to reality, and you have to switch from imaginary numbers to real numbers, then time comes back into the picture, thereby destroying the model. There's another theory known as the bubble, or the ensemble, where the theory is that there is an infinite number of universes, and these universes, each one has different laws. We live in the one where we can observe the universe and we can exist. But this doesn't really answer the question, because even an ensemble of universes, if they are expanding, they still require a beginning. And the last one that I'm going to mention is the oscillating model. This one is a model that says that the universe has been bouncing back and forth from infinity. Is that possible? Well, according to everything that we know about physics, it is not possible because of something known as entropy. Entropy is the fancy word in science for disorder. Think about it. You wake up in the morning and your bedroom is in disorder. You cleaned it last night. It was ordered. Now it's in disorder. Your pants are on a chair, your shoes are on a desk, and so on. So things tend to, spaces and things tend to become more disordered than they previously were. So what's the point here? The point is that there is a certain amount of disorder that something can take. And this scientists call it the maximum state where the universe is so disordered that, first of all, we would, if the universe were eternal, at this point, at any point, in fact, from an eternity past, the universe would have reached this state of maximum disorder, which obviously we do not observe. Not to mention that the universe would have reached by now, from infinity, a state of death, complete death. In other words, the universe tends to cool down, stretch completely, and die out. This is known as the heat death of the universe. They call it heat death, but it's really cold. Completely cold, nothing moves, nothing happening anymore. And obviously we're not there yet. But if the universe were eternal, it had an eternity to cool down and to happen. Why aren't we there yet? This seems to signify that the universe is not eternal. The universe has a finite age. Now, let me tell you about the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem. These are three of the most prominent physicists in the world. Together, they came up with a theorem showing that any universe, any kind of universe that you fancy that has an expanding, that has been expanding, any universe cannot be infinite in the past. In other words, if a universe is expanding, no matter which universe, the bubble, the oscillator, and so on, if the universe has been expanding, the universe must have a past space-time beginning. And that's what we know. We know that with a boom, 13.8 billion years ago, a singularity, a seed, expanded in every direction, and space and time and energy was created. Therefore, the universe came into existence. As astrophysicist Hugh Ross observes, no theory of physics has ever been tested in so many different contexts and so rigorously as general relativity. So the fact that general relativity has withstood all these tests so remarkably well implies that no basis at all remains for doubting the conclusion of space-time theorem. And according to Alexander Vilenkin, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There's no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. The universe began to exist. So what's our conclusion? Conclusion is that the universe was brought into existence by something else. No questions about that. This follows from the fact that that everything that comes into existence is brought into existence by something else. And what I just discussed and shown is that the universe is one of those things that came into existence. Consequently, conclusion is that the universe was brought into existence by something else. Okay, you say, fine, the universe was brought into existence by something else. But that doesn't mean God, does it? The point is that we just don't know enough about the universe. And we don't really know anything about this thing that brought the universe into existence. It can't be anything. Why does it have to be God? Well, this thing, this entity that brought the universe into existence, we can, I argue, we can know a great deal about it. First of all, we can know that it must be uncaused and eternal. I mean, it's the same problem. If the entity that brought the universe into existence is eternal, how do you explain that it has existed for a long period of time before time was invented? That's impossible. So, whatever brought the universe into existence, did not exist in time, before time. And it was not brought into existence by something else. Okay, for the same reason, because if that thing was brought into existence by something else, then you have to account for that something else and something else entirely, and so on. But an infinite regress, as I have shown, is impossible. So you have to stop at one point and say, this is the first entity that brought everything else into existence. Also, we know that since material comes after the universe, whatever brought the universe into existence cannot be material. And it cannot be in space, like you and me, because space was not invented yet. So prior to the universe, there was no space. So the entity that brought the universe into existence must be spaceless. And time as well, timeless. Time was invented at the universe. Time did not exist before the universe. Consequently, the entity that brought the universe into existence is timeless. Also, we know that this entity must be powerful enough to create everything, all matter, energy, space, time. Think about it. From nothing. Not only that, but it must be intelligent enough to fine-tune the universe. In other words, the universe relies on many different constants, many different principles. For example, when you think about the universe, there are a lot of forces like gravity, or the weak force, or the strong force. There's electricity, magnetism. There are all these principles. You look at the world, how it's made, atoms, particles. These particles stick together. Don't you remember from school that atoms have positive and negative particles inside? Okay? And also so positive and negative, why don't they stick together? Why don't positive and positive repel each other? In other words, how is it possible that atoms stick together? The various elements, parts that constitute atoms can actually stick together. Well, there is a force that explains that, okay? And that force has to be precise. So all the forces of the universe, all the constants, the physical constants of the universe must be very, very precise. Also, when the universe first expanded, the speed at which expanded was supposed to be very precise. Too fast, no universe. Too slow, no universe again. So it had to fall within a very narrow range. And so the entity that brought the universe into existence didn't just snap its fingers and that's it. It had to fine-tune the universe. Moreover, it had to fine-tune the universe in such a way that eventually the universe would favor the existence of us, the existence of intelligent life. Because think about it, maybe a universe that was not fine-tuned, might have been a universe with only hydrogen or nothing at all. Really, only subatomic particles or strings or even nothing, and then just vanish, disappear. So all this points in the very specific direction. The direction is that the entity that brought the universe into existence is not only an entity that is uncaused, immaterial, spaceless, timeless, powerful, but it must also be a personal in a sense of a mind. This is what I call God. You can call it whatever you want, but it's a personal entity, namely an entity that, not a person, okay? When I say person, I don't mean a person like me and you made of flesh and bones. I mean a person in a sense, a mind, an intelligence that thinks and reflects and plans and desires to, for example, in this case, to bring the universe into existence for a reason. But why does it have to be personal? Can it be an energy? Can it be a law? Anything other than a person, than an intelligence. The problem is that abstract entities are effete. Think about numbers. What do they cause? They don't cause anything. The number 3 or the number 5 don't really have any properties that they can bring into existence anything. So suppose that X is an abstract entity. If X brings the universe into existence, if that's what its job is, then the universe would be eternally present, right? Because if the condition that brings the universe into existence is in place, then the universe must also be there. You don't follow? Let me illustrate this with an argument. Suppose that, right? Think about the first of all, the ignition temperature of paper. In other words, paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit, which corresponds to 233 degrees Celsius. That explains the title of a famous novel, Fahrenheit 451. Now suppose that there is an eternal chamber that contains, eternal paper. There is a ream of paper. It's been there forever. It was never created. This is an analogy for the universe. Now, suppose that the temperature in the chamber has been lower than 451. What do you think it happened to the paper? It seems that the paper should be intact. Now, what happens when you turn up the thermostat and you reach 451? As you reach 451, the paper starts burning. So, now, think about it this way. What burns paper is a temperature of 451, at least 451 and higher. But if the temperature has been 451 or higher from eternity, guess what? It means that the paper inside the chamber would be burning from eternity. By now, it would have burnt out completely. What is the relevance here? The relevance is, think about the example as it applies to the universe. If the entity, the explanation, okay, in this example, what explains the paper burning? 451 degrees or higher. And if that's the explanation, and the explanation is eternal, then the effect, the burning, is also eternal. So if the explanation of the universe, the thing that brings the universe into existence, is eternal, then the universe must also be eternal. Because think about it in terms of, let's go back to the temperature. If the temperature is 451 from eternity, and the paper is there, then the burning of the paper would be eternal with the temperature. The temperature is an abstract notion. The temperature cannot say to itself to wait 5 minutes or an hour or a year before burning the paper. That's not the case. If the temperature is 451, there's no choice. The paper would be burning from eternity. Consequently, if we suppose that the entity that brings the universe into existence is an abstract entity, an entity that cannot decide or reason, and that's the explanation for the universe, it follows that the universe would be eternal. But as I have shown you throughout the argument, the universe is not eternal. So what's the best explanation? If X is eternal, why isn't the universe eternal? The best explanation seems to be God, or a person, a mind. Why? Because a mind has freedom to decide to bring the universe into existence. God can exist eternally without the universe and then bring the universe into existence a finite time ago. Now, if you're thinking, but what was God doing before the universe? Well, it's not like time was elapsing. It's not like he waited a million years, twisting his thumbs, waiting for what? No, you have to think about his existence would be timeless. So there's no time. It is one unique state of mind that is eternal and does not endure in time enough time to get bored doing nothing forever. See? So at that point, God can bring the universe into existence. So what's the conclusion? Well, the conclusion is that Kalam offers rigorous, rational, and scientific proof for the existence of God. No need for faith, no need for guessing. And consequently, the second conclusion is that explicit atheism. Remember, explicit atheism says that there is no God. God doesn't exist. There's no evidence for God. And belief in God is irrational. Well, if the Kalam argument is sound, as I believe it is, this implies that explicit atheism is positively irrational. It implies that atheists can maintain their position of atheism only by an extreme rejection of rational evidence for the existence of God. Or they can maintain their disbelief, but that would be an example of blind faith.